Welcome, everyone, into episode 4 of Full Timeout with COVID-19, Raider Student Media's quarantine podcast in this spring semester of 2020. Brendan Devin here with you, Billy Beebe, Will Brienza, your sports team for WRMU and RSM, as we have a lot to get into this episode, recapping what was the 2020 NFL draft this past weekend. So let's get right into it. And guys, first off, it was a historic draft. The first ever virtual draft put on by ESPN, ABC, and NFL Network, and the NFL. What did you guys make of this? No stage, no players walking on and hugging Roger Goodell and shaking his hands and getting that jersey. It was supposed to be in Las Vegas, and they obviously rescheduled Vegas's turn for 2022. But what did you guys make of this? I thought it was kind of, given the parameters that the NFL and ESPN had, they did a pretty good job. Took a while to get through the first 4 picks. It took like an hour and a half just to get through the predictable first like 4 picks of the draft. I thought it was pretty honorable, the fact that Roger Goodell did every single pick from his basement. He usually doesn't go into rounds 3, 4, and 5, but he did it. Looked like he was going to die. But what do you guys make of this new draft? Would you kind of like to see this be the way of the future for the draft, doing it virtually? Bill, start with you.
I thought a lot of the excitement was kind of lost by there only being, Burrow only had his parents, and some people only had the same, maybe 4 people. And I thought in a way that spoke to what the country's doing right now. Some people had 10 people, 50, just a lot of people in the room, and then some people had, really strict masks and only 2 people and all that. I just thought the excitement wasn't there a little bit, just because of, there's no crowds chanting, Goodell's being extra weird. He was just extra weird all 3 days. I didn't catch him on day 3 because I watched it on Bleacher Report. But he was super funny on night number 2. He was clearly very tired. He was sitting in his chair. He was taking his sweater off. I was like, that's funny. He has that bowl of M&Ms, and then he kept updating people on how many he ate, and it was so funny. I thought that part of it was funny.
A lot of gaffes. He messed up a lot. He just got tired.
Yeah, and then I don't know if you guys noticed this, but ESPN took footage of them sitting there, probably 30 seconds, of the families and the draft picks, and then that's what they kept looping over and over again. So it looked like they didn't, even when they got picked, they weren't like showing them live getting the call. They were just showing this of them sitting there. And then all of a sudden they would shoot it to them live, and I thought that made for just a couple awkward situations. It was very interesting. I don't know if you guys noticed that, but it seemed like they just really didn't have it together on how they wanted to capture it, which is fair. But I thought there were a couple times the moms of players looked kind of silly, just doing weird stuff. I know one mom had to wake a kid up. She was like slapping him on the face to wake him up, and he was like upset she woke him up, which that was so awkward. And then one of the girlfriends hugged the player on the head, and the mom got like real upset that she was stealing the camera spotlight, like ripped her off. And she
I
tried to
did
get
see
back
that
on,
one.
she ripped her
Yeah,
off.
the mom wanted to be first or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, in the shot, the girlfriend's like taking the whole thing up, and I think she knew that, like ripped her off. It was just, there's a lot of madness, which I thought was expected.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it again. I agree, the excitement wasn't there. Most of the fun in the draft is getting to walk up to that stage, get the hug from Goodell, and get to hold that jersey with the 1 on it or whatever, get the team hat. And like you said, there was a lot of like just weird footage that you saw. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but when they put it on the Browns after a pick, it was just an awkward moment where Stefanski obviously didn't know he was on camera. I don't know if you guys caught this, and he was touching a region that you don't want to do on TV. So there was a lot of just like mistakes here and there. And again, like you guys said, you expect that when it's something that you had to throw together unexpectedly. But to do it again, I would have to say no, especially with it being in Cleveland next year. I would hate for that to be a missed opportunity for the city of Cleveland, something so big coming to our town.
The shots of the coaches and general managers, were kind of pointless, I think. It was mostly just them sitting there. Other than, Belichick putting his husky in his chair from the computer and whatever Mike Vrabel was doing, that was probably the strangest thing of the night. But other than those, if it wasn't interesting like that, all those shots were kind of pointless, and then just kept going back to them, and nothing was happening.
Yeah, the only coach that got excited the whole draft, it seemed like, was Coach Gruden. Every time he would pick,
right.
you could see his excitement. And Patricia with his kids. I will say it was cool getting to see some of those shots where the kids celebrate with the coaches. But I agree, there was a lot of times where they were just showing the coaches sitting there, twirling their thumbs, picking their nose, just really not doing anything. But there were some moments that were pretty cool to see, and just to see families together in such a hard time.
I also thought, I don't know if you guys noticed, they just seemed very unwilling to break the schedule. They spent so much time. I know everybody talked about, there were tons of sad stories. Everybody had a sad story and something tragic.
Yeah.
But just extra, they were just so locked in that I stood there for 10 minutes saying, gosh, the pick is in. It said the pick is in. And yes, that happens every year, that you want them to just announce it. But like, it felt, especially this year, at one point, Trey Wingo kept talking. He was like, as soon as we know the pick is in, we'll go. And Michael Irvin was on mute, but he was like yelling. He was like, the pick is in. It says the pick is in. And just they were so unwilling to move. And then I think a great example of that too is Jordan Love getting selected. They just didn't want to go into it. They didn't spend any time on it. They spent, whatever. They spent that pick, and that was it. And it was like, if that was a normal draft, Aaron Rodgers possibly being replaced would have taken up the rest of the night. And they were just so unwilling to mix it up or move on.
I think they wanted to. It was just a little more difficult because they had analysts from both ESPN and NFL Network on the panel, so that there was more analysts, and they were all, virtual. They're all doing it over Skype or whatever, they were using. So it was a little more unnatural than everyone being at one table and it actually being like a real conversation. But yeah, it was a different feel for sure. I agree with you, Will. With it being in Cleveland next year, you really hope that it goes back to normal and Cleveland actually gets to throw a draft party. Because I, for one, will definitely be there on that Thursday night. Well, let's get into all the picks and what occurred over the weekend. And we all knew this was coming, but Joe Burrow going number 1 to Cincinnati, the national champion from LSU, Ohio's own, going back to his home state and be the starting quarterback for the Bengals this coming year. Joe Burrow, guys, haven't talked much about him. A lot to prove this upcoming year, going to a team with less talent than I think he had with LSU, not as many weapons around him. Is he going to be able to live up to the hype? Is he going to be able to handle the pressure of taking a team that has been in the basement of the NFL for a while and try and revive that organization down in Cincinnati?
So just doing a more of a negative approach, I think, on Burrow, just because I think people have just deemed him, obviously the most amazing story in college sports. I won't doubt that. I just have 2 looming questions, and that's, number 1, how did he go from 16 to 60 touchdowns in Baton Rouge? And then number 2 is, why could he never get the Ohio State job? Those two things just stick out to me, and I know you get to work with different trainers, and you get to mix things up, and and they just talk about, oh yeah, he was motivated. He just never, this season he stepped up, and it's like, why didn't he step it up as a junior when he knew he had to beat out Dwayne Haskins? It's confusing to me. And I think just the rise is just highly questionable, from 6th-round pick to number 1 pick, and then again he threw 16 touchdowns his junior year, and then 60 this year. I think all that's a little confusing, and then I think people gloss over the fact that his NFL comparison's Alex Smith. It's not Andrew Luck. It's not Peyton Manning. It's not even Tom Brady. It has been Tom Brady weirdly at times, but mostly people say Alex Smith. So I think that could put perspective for people that Joe Burrow could have an Alex Smith-like career.
Which isn't a bad career, but it's not a good career.
No.
It's not a Hall of Fame.
It's not a Super Bowl career.
But I agree there are some questions. You make a very good point. How do you go from 16 to 60? How do you never get the job at Ohio State? I mean, to be fair, Ohio State did have a very good quarterback room at the time as well. But I think it was the right pick for Cincinnati. He's a pro-style quarterback. You've dealt with Andy Dalton for what seems like 20 years. I know it's only been, 9 or 10. But you haven't won a playoff game in 20-some-odd years. And you go 2-14, and you end up starting a quarterback that shouldn't be a starting quarterback in the NFL for the back half of your season. It was obviously needed a quarterback, and I think Joe Burrow was definitely the best available quarterback in this draft. You have the first pick. He just ends a season, like Bill said, one of the best seasons, if not the best season in college football history for a quarterback and a team, honestly. And I honestly don't think it's that big of a risk. They don't have a great offensive line, but they have one that will protect Joe Burrow than many other offensive lines in the NFL right now. And he has some weapons. He has A.J. Green. They drafted T. Higgins. If Tyler Heifert stays healthy, he could be a weapon. And you have a defense that's on the rise. So I think, honestly, this was the best pick and the smartest pick for Cincinnati. And I'm not saying they're going to go from 2-14 to 10-6, but it's definitely going to take some time. Maybe this year they go 4-12 or 5-11, a 3-win rise, and you start seeing them build from there. But I do think in the long run, this was the best pick Cincinnati could make.
And Bill, to your point, not being able to win the starting job at Ohio State, I find that really strange because look who he was behind, Dwayne Haskins and J.T. Barrett. And where are they now, right?
Well, Dwayne Haskins is the starting quarterback for Washington.
Yeah, but he didn't go number 1 in the draft.
Yeah, but he went 15th. It's not like you can't call him a bust. I mean, he just got the job.
I'm not calling him a bust just yet. But
so I think with Barrett, it was never in question that he could beat JT Barrett out. But number 1, it doesn't seem like he beat Haskins out for the backup job. Barrett had a storied career at Ohio State. I think he's marked down as if not the greatest quarterback in Ohio State history, like top 3. His stats definitely show that. He couldn't beat Haskins out for the backup job. And then when he had, I think he would have had 2 more years, he couldn't beat Haskins out.
And wasn't there like a period of time he was trying to beat out Tate Martell too?
I think Martell was just in it with, there's just so much competition. It's like he never solidified himself.
That quarterback room was just so crazy. I don't think that's why he.
And then my other counter is a lot of people have said that, Brent. I agree. That's just a stacked room. Martell, I love Tate Martell. I think he's really good, and I hope he has a bounce back year. Haskins, Barrett, and then him and his family talk all about Nebraska. Oh, all our family went there. We love it there. Well, why didn't they ever come get you? Nebraska stinks.
Yeah.
Why did they never get you? But LSU came and got you. It makes no sense.
Here's another thing to think about as well. It is weird, definitely, to think about that he wasn't a starter at Ohio State, and then he had a tough junior year. Maybe he did. Maybe he was like, he realized, right now I'm a 6th round draft pick. I'm not gonna succeed in the NFL if I don't get my head on straight. And maybe he did grind that offseason. I mean, you think about the teams he played. Alabama, how many defensive players from Alabama got drafted in the top 2 rounds? I mean, Raekwon Davis, their whole linebacking core seems like got drafted. And Trevon Diggs, Xavier McKinney, all these guys went top 2 rounds, and he put I think it was 48 points up on that defense, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe he did grind really hard in the offseason, 46 points. And maybe he just realized this is my last chance to do anything. And he put his head on straight, had one of the best off seasons, and turned into one of the best seasons. And now he's ready for the next step.
I think he's going to have a really hard time at that next step. I mean, Cincinnati's offense isn't anything pretty to write up about. AJ Green, got Tyler Boyd, like you mentioned, Eifert. They drafted T. Higgins from Clemson, which is an upgrade, I guess. And that AFC North, where you could probably make a Pro Bowl defense out of just those 4 teams. I don't know. He's going to have a really hard time. I think the adjustment is going to be really hard for him too.
For me, it's more about I just want people to just take in how hard it is to be the NFL quarterback and just historically the path of so many players and the comparisons for Smith and other QBs. I think maybe Andrew Luck won 7 games. Just besides that, number 1 picks don't win a lot of games. People, I think people just think he's going to come in firing, improving the Bengals, and it's going to be a 3-win season. That's just where I sit. I don't think Joe Burrow's going to win 5, 6, 7. I can't picture him just all of a sudden swinging the Bengals one way.
That never happens. I can't tell you the last time a QB went number 1 and then they were above 500.
I mean, they 7-8-1. But Bill, here's my question: do you completely disagree with the pick? If so, who would you have taken instead?
No, that's a good point. I just think the narrative is surefire, so easy. Just a guy that, I just have questions, man. I guess I would have taken Burrow too. You probably would have gotten ripped if you didn't. But I just have so many different questions. His pros versus cons are so interesting. It's like his pros is his awareness, and sometimes I don't know. That's just I just can't picture this guy winning so many games and just playing 10 years and nobody knew his name a year ago.
I agree. This screams. I don't want to say it screams bust, but he looks like a college quarterback. I don't see an NFL quarterback in him.
You also got to think about maybe the team he played on at LSU. I mean, that whole offensive line, it seemed like got drafted. The whole receiving core,
the whole team got drafted.
His tight end got picked up as a undrafted free agent. His running back was drafted 32nd overall, and then his whole defense was drafted. I mean, maybe it was just the team he was on, and that's why he was able to have 60 touchdowns. But still, I feel like no matter what team you're on, you have to have some talent to put up 60 touchdowns.
I mean, I do like the Bengals roster. I don't want to sell. I think Green, Boyd, T. Higgins, and Joe Mixon is a really good offense. Yeah. They drafted O-line last year. I think they're stable at that position. And for the first time in years, they decided to go sign free agents. I don't know. I have questions about Burrow. I don't know what A.J. Green has left. And then, I mean, people are starting to think McVay's not it anymore. And their whole premise is built around a McVay coaching tree and Zach Taylor, who was not even his offensive coordinator. He was his QB coach. Yeah. So what if all of a sudden McVay sucks, and then you look at your coach and you're like, I hired you because you worked for McVay?
There's a lot. You're right. I mean, this whole Cincinnati season is going to be either a dumpster fire or they actually get what they want out of him. But he has a lot of growth to do. It's not going to be, Cinderella story for the Bengals next year. But speaking of their draft, guys, there are a lot of teams that had really solid drafts. You can go into the Browns here. A couple teams in the AFC North actually had good drafts. But in Minnesota, they had like 18 picks or something like that. It was crazy. They were always on the clock. What teams were you really impressed with getting better in the draft this past weekend?
I think Baltimore killed it.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
easier. First off, I want to say I think it's not hard to have a good draft because, number one, everybody's excited about new players, so it's hard not to get a good grade and please your fans. Number two, most picks are mapped out for you, just by need, by position in the draft, and then if you trade up for anyone, people get excited. I thought there were maybe 3 teams that didn't look good by the end of the draft. That Atlanta and Seattle were one of them, or 2 of them, and then I mean, Baltimore is already good, so anything they do after that just makes them look really, really good. And Patrick Queen, I wanted for the Browns. That was a great pick. J.K. Dobbins, number one, you get J.K. Dobbins, who I think is only going to boost your offense to another level. Number two, you got the Steelers to pass on J.K. Dobbins, so you can rub that in their face twice a year. That's an Ohio State guy. And then they got Malik Harrison, who, again, I wanted for the Browns. So they just loaded up at that position. And then I like Devin Duvernay a lot, a receiver out of Texas, who I had them originally taking a speed receiver, and they took Duvernay, and then now that was their speed receiver, so they look really good now.
Yeah, I'm gonna say 2 teams. One, Minnesota. Minnesota absolutely killed this draft. 20.
It's pretty hard when they have that many picks.
Yeah, but I mean, 22nd, you get Justin Jefferson. He's going to replace Diggs. You trade back and you still get Jeff Gladney at 31. And then you get Ezra Cleveland at 58 for a tackle who we were talking about first-round talent. A couple other picks passed by. DJ Wanham, a very good defensive end, really under the spotlight there of Javon Kinlaw. That's why no one really knew who he was, but I think that's a very good defensive end at 117. And then James Lynch and Troy Dye are 2 picks that I absolutely loved from Minnesota at 130 and 132. I mean, you just watch their highlight tapes at Baylor and Oregon, and these 2, I think they might be 2 steals for Minnesota, and that's why I give Minnesota winning this draft. But a second team that I think did a really good job is Dallas. At 17,
I was going to say them, yep.
At 17, CeeDee Lamb, I thought it was kind of like, let's take him so Philadelphia can't have him. But then you think about it, and you're like, man, they have Gallup, Lamb, and Amari Cooper now, and Dak Prescott has, and Ezekiel Elliott as well. Dak Prescott has all the options in the world now. And then to get Diggs, who falls to 51, I thought that was a really good pick for them. And then Tyler Biadasz at 146 to help that offensive line after a retirement, a lot of injuries last year. I think Biadasz is a very good pick late when he was supposed to be a first-round pick for most mock drafts that initially came out. Definitely fell a little bit, but I think still a great pick for Dallas at 146.
Yeah, Dallas definitely improved on both sides of the ball. I wouldn't be surprised if the Cowboys ended up going deep in the playoffs this year. I know that's a stretch because they always seem to blow it. But another team that was kind of surprising for me was the Giants. Improved on the defense immensely. They lost Landon Collins. They replaced him with Xavier McKinney. They picked up Andrew Thomas, who I wanted for the Browns. He went early. They got Matt Pert. Shane Lemieux was a huge pickup for on the defense. I'm not saying that they're going to the playoffs this year, but I think this draft for New York was a step in the right direction. When you got Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley, when you have Barkley and he's a talent that you don't want to waste. I think Gettleman did a good job with the draft this year for New York.
I will say one team that really I'm confused about, so I'd say a bad draft, is Las Vegas. Henry Ruggs at 12, good pick. They really reached on Arnett, in my opinion, at 19, like extremely high reach. Bowden at 80, that's a so-so pick. I don't think it's a bad pick. I don't think it's an amazing pick, but it just seemed like they took a wide receiver every pick. And I don't know if you guys disagree with me there, but it felt like every time Las Vegas pick was in, it was like, blah, 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 a wide receiver from, and I'm just like, they're going to have a wide receiver room with 16 guys competing for a roster spot.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's crazy that teams can stick out as bad drafters when in reality you're just supposed to excite your fan base with picks, most of which are mapped out for you. I said Seattle because they used their first rounder on a linebacker that a lot of people had in the 4th round or 3rd round, and they took him in the 1st.
Yeah.
Not only did they take a linebacker, they skipped out on defensive end, which they need. Atlanta, I felt bad because they were supposed to get Henderson, and they got screwed out of that. So they ended up having to take A.J. Terrell, who I don't like as much as a lot of the corners. But again, I thought that was a reach. And then they ended up going center, which they don't need a center. I know they might be playing for the future. It's hard to stick out as a bad drafting team, and all those guys did. And then, of course, I'm forgetting the Packers, who, whatever you want to say about the QB situation, fine, but they didn't take a receiver. They took another running back, which I thought they had a good tandem going.
Yeah, I did too.
I don't know how they decided to invest in a running back, and then I don't know that they went heavy on linebacker, which is another thing they needed.
Yeah, Jacksonville, the reason Atlanta had to reach on Terrell was because Jacksonville reached. I was surprised Henderson went top 10, but if you know you want someone, I guess you take them. So, taking.
Yeah, not sure what Green Bay was doing there with Jordan Love. I'm surprised that they took him in the 1st round. I mean, there wasn't even really any talks of Green Bay taking a quarterback that early. Take one late for a backup, but I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on that. Like trying to run Aaron Rodgers out of Green Bay. Do they think he's done? And Jordan Love's the future?
I mean, I think it's just kind of the similar thing that they did with when they drafted Aaron Rodgers, give him a few years behind Brett Favre. Now they're trying to give Jordan Love, who they think has the potential of being a star, give him a few years behind Aaron Rodgers. But your problem with that is if you keep doing it that way, you're not getting your quarterback started until they're like 26, 27 years old.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of things about just drama going on there, that him and LaFleur are done and they can't handle Rodgers anymore. But for me, I think it is a little different because, and I don't remember it too well, but I don't think Brett Favre was really winning them a crazy amount of games over there when they drafted Rodgers. Maybe they were doing okay, but the highest they got back after was 2007. They went to the NFC Championship, and Favre threw them out of that game. There's no signs that you need to possibly replace Aaron Rodgers. You just had your best season in a while, and then you can bank now that you're getting better at making roster moves. They brought in, oh man, I think Aaron Williams is one, and I forget the other running back's name. They're so key on taking really good receivers in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th round. Aaron Rodgers has thrown one touchdown pass his entire career to a 1st-round receiver.
Yeah.
A.J. Dillon, you mean?
No, Mercedes Lewis is the only one he's ever thrown a touchdown to. That's a 1st-rounder.
Oh, I thought you meant them drafting this year.
Oh, yeah. They add A.J. Dillon. It's just have some faith in what you're doing. And just as a guy that wants his franchise and the Browns to succeed so badly, it's crazy to see a franchise go 13-3 and think about 3 years from now.
Yeah, that's been the case with Green Bay for a while. Like you said, they finally get that good year, and instead of building to get to the playoffs, it seems like playoffs aren't even on their mind. Or better yet, a Super Bowl. I mean, they having a hard time living in the present. But the team that I was surprised with, and maybe this is on their mind for next year, but New England not taking a quarterback this year in the draft.
Probably.
Yeah, would not be surprised if. I mean, that's like I mentioned. He's probably on their mind for next year, and he'll probably be Belichick's next Super Bowl champion. But loaded up on the tight end position. and that was probably a message to Gronkowski. And it looks like Belichick is already throwing in the towel for this year. That's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what he does. I didn't pay too much attention to the Patriots. I know they didn't take a quarterback, and then once again they traded out of the first round, and then they took the safety out of Illinois, Ryan. So they went classic Belichick, and I think
He never has drafts that just scream like he's a genius in the drafts.
no, I mean
I know that's the
opposite.
history. Yeah, I know that's the history. He's not like all crazy about the draft, and it's not that important to him. But
Yeah, I mean he's historically just had bad drafts and bad picks, and taking long snappers. And this year he took a kicker. Just little things like that add up over time. It's just the Patriots aren't interesting to watch, and I'll wait till their season starts to figure out exactly what they want to do. Jared Stidham, I've just kind of gotten more into figuring out exactly who he is, and we'll see. He's a guy that came out of high school highly regarded, and then kind of had a so-so career at Auburn, got taken late, and clearly they have some type of interest in playing him, or they've just been waiting to launch that Cam Newton bullet. I don't know yet.
Bill, to touch back, this is kind of bringing back another topic. To touch back on the Packers linebacker situation, they did add Christian Kirksey. Don't forget that.
oh boy,
Bud.
No, I'm just joking. But yeah, it's going to be hopefully a season that plays out, but an interesting one at that.
I'd love to see New England not in the playoffs this year. I'd like to see him in the playoffs not in the playoffs with Tom Brady, but New England's definitely getting old for me. Which brings to the biggest steals in the draft. There was a lot of huge pickups that can definitely shake up some rosters. Guys, were the biggest steals in the draft that will immediately make an impact?
I think it'll be close to either Isaiah Simmons, who the Browns were so close to getting. The Cardinals are just in the same situation and pulled the trigger. I think he's going to do wonders for a team that has a lot of pressure on themselves to do well. Or one of those receivers that slipped a little bit. CeeDee Lamb could just go off this year. And then again, I thought Jerry Jeudy should have went first, and he went last in the 3 group. So, but if I had to put money on it, I think CeeDee Lamb's just going to step in and really make teams look foolish for not taking him.
All right. Biggest steal of the draft for me, 49th overall, Pittsburgh Steelers, Chase Claypool. I mean, it's not just because I kind of like the Irish, but I mean, you have a guy who's 6'4", 240, ran a 4.42, has a vertical jump of 41 inches, just absolutely impressed at the combine. But that's not all that he impressed in. He goes 66 receptions for over 1,000 yards and 13 touchdowns in his senior year at Notre Dame. I mean, he resembles. I'm not saying he's going to have the career like this guy, but he resembles Calvin Johnson. And if you ask me, I think he's a better wide receiver than Juju Smith-Schuster. And I think this is going to be good for the Steelers because I think Claypool becomes their number 1. And you see Juju have a similar year to his rookie year where he was a number 2 and he wasn't double teamed all the time. And that's why I think this was such a great pick for Pittsburgh. It pains me to say that being a Browns fan, but I think Pittsburgh made one of the best picks of the draft at 49.
Think Claypool's replacing Brown?
I won't say that he will put up the numbers quite as Brown, but I think Claypool is a number 1, and if he reaches his potential, he can put up some big numbers. And I think having him and Juju together is going to be a really good thing for Ben and probably what will be his last season and any quarterback they have in the future.
I think my biggest steal is Patrick Queen to Baltimore out of LSU. Underrated linebacker, 28th overall. I think that defense needed a lot of help. You saw it in the playoff game against Tennessee last year. And you also saw it against the Browns early in the season. The defense had a lot of holes, didn't tackle well at all. A lot of teams picked them apart across the middle, and Patrick Queen, perfect size. I mean, he's an athlete. He's definitely going to help Harbaugh over in Baltimore. Just a guy loaded of talent, and you saw that with all the LSU picks. Broke the record for most draft picks in one draft. They had 14 draft selections. Michigan and Ohio State surprisingly tied for second with 10. And then Alabama had 9. Clemson, Florida, Georgia, and Utah all had 7. Auburn and Notre Dame had 6. And guys, even we had one D3 selection out of St. John's. I'm trying to find that name. Ben Barch, 116th overall, went to Jacksonville from St. John's up in Minnesota. So he had all levels of college football represented. Our guys, Justin Hill and D'Angelo Fulford, didn't get the call just yet. They're hoping to at some point before the season. But let's go into our hometown Browns. I think Andrew Berry played it safe. He didn't try and make a splash. There wasn't a lot of hype riding into this year's draft. I know last year they didn't even have a pick in the first round. And so we were able to get a little more excited this year. But I think he played it safe. Knew what they had to get. Day 1 was offense. Day 2 was defense. And then back to offense on day 3. Utilized the SEC talent. And our main concern was defense. And I think he hit the nail in the coffin on defense.
Yeah, I did get a little riled up on day 2 with Andrew Berry. I thought he was getting back into the Sashi Brown kind of way of doing things, which is trade back, get as many picks as you can, keep more trade backs, more picks for next year, more picks for next year. I was very upset he passed in round 3. I had a lot of names that I really liked, and he passed them over. I really was upset. I was nervous that this was just another move to make just picks were on his mind. More picks. Next year I can get a 3rd rounder, I can get this, I can get that. And it's like sometimes you just have to sit and make the pick, man. Who's the guy you had greatest? I like Zach Bond a lot. They skipped out on him. They actually traded the Saints, and the Saints took him. And then I think 3 more linebackers went before the Browns picked again. I was very upset. Then they took Jordan Elliott at defensive tackle. So now, I'm just a little riled up that they had taken a 4th defensive tackle instead of a linebacker, which we clearly needed. And then finds his way back into the 3rd round and finally takes a linebacker. But, I mean, it was a little stressful for a second. But I agree with you, Brendan. I think he did at times just make the right move. The move that wasn't going to draw too much, scrutiny or drama, just a safety's there, drop to you, take him. They say they got their guy at left tackle. They didn't debate it. They took him. But I think for that moment, I was a little worried. Jacob Phillips is okay. I think he's graded as one of the best tacklers by PFF, but PFF can be hit or miss at times, especially in college. I like to read PFF for the professional grades, how they're doing in the pros. They had Corey Coleman as a really great receiver. They had Emmanuel Ogbah as should be a top defensive end, they said. So, just some odd stuff going on. But I think if you filter through and look at each guy individually, not the rounds, I think you can be excited.
Yeah, I agree. I was getting a little worried. I wanted there was a few linebackers, like Bill said, that kept getting taken before the Browns, and I was just like, honestly, that's one of our biggest needs on that is our biggest need on the defense. And then we took defense tackle. When I saw that pick, Jordan Elliott, I thought, Well, this definitely puts Ogunjobi on the hot seat now. He really has to have a big year because they have the guy behind him to take over the job if need be. Love the pick of Jedrick Wills. A lot of people are worried right tackle, left tackle, but you got to think he protected the blind side of Tua. Should definitely played like a left tackle, just on the right side. Grant Delpit, love that pick. We need a safety. Jacob Phillips, I mean, he's on LSU, so if you keep picking Tigers, there's a good chance they're going to succeed. Wasn't a big fan of the Harrison Bryant pick. I know he's a very talented tight end who definitely fell, and we took him because of that. But after having Hooper and Njoku, Carlson, I mean, our tight end room is becoming like the Bears. And then I love the Donovan Peoples-Jones pick in round 6. Receiver that I thought would definitely get picked earlier than that, but I think he can be a solid 3, maybe 4 now that we re-signed Hollywood Higgins. But I think he can be a key part in the offense as well as maybe even the return game.
Yeah, it was weird to see them keep trading down on night 2, especially in that 3rd round. I kind of agree with you, Billy. I don't know why they just would have gone with their pick that they had. Smart to trade out of the 7th round because you never really want to be, still on the clock in that 7th round. You kind of want to be done with by the time Saturday night rolls around. But I definitely like Jedrick Wills. I like that Grant Delpit pick to improve that secondary, and Jacob Phillips. I'm not sure what role Donovan Peoples-Jones is going to have now. If you look at the wide receiver room for Cleveland, obviously Landry, Beckham, and Higgins. Do you keep Damian Ratley? What do you do with Taywan Taylor? It's that wide receiver room really is stacked now. I mean, I wouldn't mind, having Donovan Peoples-Jones as a 4th or 5th guy to go to, but don't expect them to be making plays on every 2nd and 3rd downs. I don't think.
Yeah, I thought a couple picks I liked because they were depth picks, and I know a lot of people don't want to hear depth because that means they don't play, but if you look at the Browns over the last couple of years, I think depth would be a really good thing, not just playing time-wise, but for comfortability-wise. I know even some people can't believe this, but just last year in Baltimore, Devereaux Lawrence has a huge game, right? Plays really well, ended up with a sack and then a pick, and then Devereaux Lawrence is not on the team at the end of the year. Cardell Hodge, Taywan Taylor, they weren't big players to start the year, but they are by the end. So the key is, me personally, and I think the Browns organization would like to have a guy that starts and finishes the year on the Browns. And if they need him, then he's played the whole year, not only learning from your coaching staff and your system the whole year, but now he's comfortable with your players. So now, and I know he's going to be on the team this year, but you don't have to sign a Stephen Carlson in week 10 and have to play him. You drafted Hunter Bryant. You don't have to bring in Carl Davis in week 5. Now you have Jordan Elliott. Now you don't have to trade for Taywan Taylor or sign Taywan Taylor. Donovan Peoples-Jones has been getting better the whole year. I think they finally made a couple of moves like that. Again, I would have liked them to really bolster down on linebacker. I thought I know it's crazy, but maybe even go just 1-2 linebacker, and make it a competitive room and see who really wants to play and learn. But I was in love with Donovan Peoples-Jones. I think he's awesome. I would have taken him in the 3rd round. So the fact that they got him in the 6th is huge. I think he's going to return kicks probably, and then slowly earn his way into more playing time as far as actually being a receiver. That's a pretty stacked room. I think it's going to be really hard for him to get time. That's why I think he needs to buckle down and get a job as a kick returner.
And I don't think the Browns are done quite yet with this offseason. Just got a notification. The Browns have $38,500,000 still in cap space. Obviously, there were talks with Jadeveon Clowney come to Cleveland. We don't know where that's at, if that's even going to happen at this point, but wouldn't that be awesome? And then another thing that's on the rise as of late is maybe signing defensive end, 4-time Pro Bowler Everson Griffin. So $38 million in cap space is a lot. And like we talked about in the last episode, if you get Clowney for like 12, Evers and Griffin probably won't be much less than 10. He'd probably be under 10. And you still got over $15 to $20 million in cap space signing those two guys. So after seeing that, I don't think the Browns are done quite yet.
Yeah, I don't. Go ahead.
Sorry. Go ahead, Brendan. I was looking at linebacker, and I really thought about it, right? Obviously, I wanted them to make more moves than they have, and Clowney is my next kind of thought is go get Clowney. But the more I thought about it is if they've sat down and really thought about what they've done at linebacker and who's left out there to get, I just don't think they're interested in bringing in anyone else. They've already signed 3 linebackers and drafted one. That's a lot of work at a position to sign 3 guys and draft a guy. In some circles and in my head, the job is done. No matter who you got, I know they didn't get great talent at it, and there are some names you might like to see. Clay Matthews, Darron Lee, Darren Lee, who's a former Buckeye, would all be good names to maybe get in there. But I mean, if you think about guys, if you said, hey, any other position, if you said, hey, we're short at receiver, and then you sign 3 receivers and draft one, wouldn't you probably say, all right, they're probably done at receiver. They made moves. So I think that's where they sit at linebacker, as bad as it is.
Yeah, but you look at the linebacker position, they don't even have depth at this point. They have 3 guys total with the linebacker before the draft, and now they're up to what? They did sign a couple guys. You're right. So they're up to what, 6? That's still not depth.
And that goes back to the issue that Billy was talking about, how you have depth on offense, and you don't have to worry about someone coming in at the end of the season and trying to make an impact. The linebacker position for the Browns, you don't know who's going to be playing at the end of the year. If Wilson gets hurt, if Phillips gets hurt. Yeah, I know you don't want to be talking about that scenario, but you're looking at Jermaine Grace or BJ Goodson being your number 1 or 2 linebackers at the end of the year, and you don't want to be in that position. I know, Billy, you're talking about how they might be done, but I think you go and get Clowney or someone else.
I mean, if you're running a 4-3, Bill, and you have 6 linebackers, that's 5 of those guys are probably playing a game. So you have 1 backup, maybe even 6 guys are playing in the game. So I don't think we have depth. And maybe those signings earlier in free agency were depth signings and hope that they could complete something with a guy like Clowney or Clay Matthews or something like that.
I agree with you guys. I'm the same. I get as many guys in there as you can. And like I just said, I would rather they not get to the end of the year and say, hey, here's this guy. He was in Atlanta in the first few weeks, and then this team signed him, but now we got him. I think we just sit at, it's just hard for me to figure. You can't keep beating it and just, hey, another beating the dead horse with, hey, another linebacker. We brought in another linebacker. Here's another guy we're interested in. It's just, eventually you just have to look at the guys you have and say, this is what we got. This is what we did. For me, obviously, I hope they bring in Darren Lee and Clay Matthews, but I'm just saying I don't think that they're just going to continue to plug and address this issue now. It probably will end up one of those situations where they wait and see who cuts who and who, I mean, they didn't even go linebacker with undrafted free agents.
Yeah. Maybe they've been in talks with Clowney and the deal just hasn't been complete. Maybe we can just think that way, be very optimistic.
But Clowney would play right end, wouldn't he?
He's more like an outside linebacker edge rusher, so I don't think he'd play. I mean, he's
already picked up a couple of guys like that.
He's very versatile, so he could probably play anywhere you need him.
Yeah, I pictured him on the line, but yeah, I know he's a pass rusher. I don't know. I think if anything, it's just a call to Sione Takitaki to step up. It's really annoying that he was a higher draft pick than Mack Wilson, and he just hasn't done anything.
Yeah.
You never know. I mean, he might have a really good bounce back year this coming fall. It just worries me because that linebacker, every team has a spot on the field where they're weak, and for us, it's the linebackers, which isn't great when you're in a division where you're trying to beat Baltimore and Pittsburgh twice a year, and that's just been, I mean, you look at those games in the past, and our performance on defense has just been lackluster and way below average. You look at the job that we did against Baltimore in Game 2 last year, completely, crap the bed. And then the Pittsburgh game, all that hype going into that game, and you can't beat Mason. Who was it? That Daniel
Doug Hodges, yeah.
Doug Hodges guy.
Hodges.
You can't beat him.
Well,
I mean, that's just pathetic.
And you guys know I've been a little angsty about Schobert and Kirksey. So when you had Schobert and Kirksey and then whoever else in that linebacker room, people would say, oh, we're good at linebacker. And then we were 28th in the league. We were bad at defense. So now at least at this point, you've got a fresh start and not a bunch of money poured into it and not there's a chance Mac Wilson's better than Joe Schobert and Kirksey. And there's a chance somehow Jordan Phillips is better than I think it's more switched around, but there's a chance Phillips and Wilson and Taki are the best 3 linebackers the Browns have ever had for the next 5 years. It could be incredible, but I don't know. It's like,
there's
is the
probably
evil
something
you don't know better than the evil you do? I don't know.
there's probably something they know that we don't. And I know there's a new regime in there and everything. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on, do we have brains in the front office now or not after the draft? But I know it's pretty hard to judge Andrew Berry after his first draft. But yeah, there's a lot of questions. I'm just hoping to be surprised this year by that linebackers.
Here's a weird question. Are the Browns bringing in a third QB or no?
They not have Garrett Gilbert?
I don't know. I
thought
didn't
we
think
had
so.
Keith Keenum and Garrett Gilbert.
I thought they still had Gilbert.
Oh, okay. Maybe they do. I didn't even realize he was on multiple years. And then I know we've touched on it twice now, but it's nice to see Njoku got an extension or another year, so we have him for 2 more years. But again, like you said, it's hot seat time for Ogunjobi.
Yeah, it is.
I think San Francisco is just a perfect example that if you haven't completely been proven and been the benefiter to a team, they're not going to pay you big money on the D-line, and they're going to go younger. So they let Buckner walk. They get a first-round pick, and they go Kinlaw. I think the Browns are perfectly prepared to let Ogunjobi walk. Say we have Billings and Richardson another year, and then now we have Elliott, who he had a good PFF grade, but Daniel Jeremiah, I don't know if you remember them saying this in the draft, guys, but he said he had a tough senior year because he got double-teamed a lot. The NFL is not going to be different. I don't know. He's going to get double-teamed if he's a defensive tackle.
Yeah.
If you can't play being double-teamed, then you probably shouldn't be in the NFL.
I mean, if Georgia's O-line double-teams you, what are you going to do against Pittsburgh's or Baltimore's?
Exactly.
I don't know. Again, I have hopes that these guys, it's just a different set. It's a new energy. These guys, I don't think Jordan Elliott's going to play every down. I still think it's going to be Richardson. I think he's 4th on that defensive tackle list. But, there's spots where these rookies are going to play and not. I think in the linebacker room, it sits Wilson, Taki, Goodson, and Phillips. And you have the chance to move up, but at the same time, I don't think the Browns want you out there when you have to be competitive in every division game.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only good thing is that they came out of the SEC. And, I mean, that's football country. Those defenses are really, really good. Unlike the Big 12. So
Big 12 defense tackle, that's when you start getting
worried.
I will say, first time in a while, I'm not worried about our secondary. I think we have a really good corner room. We add Del Pitt, we add Sendejo, we add Carl Joseph. We have a little bit of depth, honestly, in that safety room now too. I think for the first time in a while, I'm not worried about what we're putting out there in our secondary.
Yeah, I agree. That secondary looks really good right now after getting Del Pitt. I'm excited to see them out there. Just like an all LSU secondary, basically.
And that's not a bad.
Apparently, Del Pitt's supposed to get a lot of time at slot. They just want him down low to cover tight ends. So good experience for him. And
Yeah.
while I like Kevin Johnson, I know Kevin Johnson is kind of a bust of a first rounder. So I'd rather have Delpit getting meaningful time and then Johnson and Money Mitch fill in. And then I don't know if you guys saw, but their options were between Lamar Jackson out of Nebraska or AJ Green out of Oklahoma State at corner, and they signed AJ Green. So could see an AJ Green matchup this year as the Browns signed him out of Oklahoma State. You can look up his highlights. I really like him.
Yep.
And they paid him like I think they gave him more money than Donovan Peoples-Jones.
Wow.
I'm really excited to see what Carl Joseph does this year for us.
Oh, this is just
I think.
Oh, go ahead, Brendan. Sorry.
No, I think Joseph is one of those kind of quiet guys that's going to be able to make a big impact in the deep in the secondary. But I agree.
Yeah.
I think the first time in a long time, our secondary isn't really an issue.
Even D-line, I don't love where it sits. I think you can make improvements, but if you have 4 spots to fill, I think 3 of them filled pretty well, and the 4th one isn't like bleeding out. I think Vernon has a chance to get back, and I think Adrian Claiborne's a guy that if you go 2 downs and it's 3rd down and you tag Claiborne in now, I think that's a good move.
You definitely want to give Vernon another shot. I mean, you pick him up, and sure, he doesn't do well the first year, but if you really want to commit to him, this is a year for it. What were you gonna say, Will?
I was gonna say, I just wanted to praise the loyalty on Rashard Higgins for a second. I mean, the guy gets offered from several teams, but due to his love of Baker Mayfield, he signs for less than $1 million to stay in Cleveland.
Okay, Billy and I were talking about this before you got on.
That's just
I disagree.
What do you mean you disagree?
Do you think he really had better offers?
I'm sure he had offers better than $1 million, yes.
I think he was desperate. He doesn't want to be here. You see what they did with him last year?
I'd be excited.
I know the guy's talented, and I'm excited to have him.
I'm a firm believer that if you can take Kirk Cousins to the playoffs, you're doing something right, and that's why I'm excited about Stefanski.
I'm excited about Stefanski too, but I think you're thinking of Higgins is just wrong here. He doesn't want to be number 3 behind Landry and OBJ. He wants to be a number 1 or number 2 somewhere else.
I think he's gonna realize. I think he realized that he's actually gonna get to play now that Kitchens is out.
Yeah, I'm a little confused. I don't understand. I preach more than anything that it's going to be a 2 receiver, 2 tight end set most plays.
They loaded up on tight end, so
yeah, he'll be the mixed kind of guy. You know, you can't run the same formation every play.
First off, I don't think he's bad. That's not what I'm saying. I'm happy he's our 3rd receiver, and I'm happy he took under $1 million. That's incredible. But if he's waiting for the Browns to pay him a multi-year big money contract, it's not happening.
Yeah.
I caught a pass from him, so I like him a lot.
Okay. That's the reason why. Okay.
Discussion's over.
I was in the front row before a game in warm-ups, and he was passing, and he threw a pass to me, and I got to throw it back. So,
well, I know we're all happy to have Hollywood back in Cleveland and keep the wide receiver threat alive for one more year. The offense is definitely looking stacked, and it's nice not having to worry about all those positions on offense. It seems like every spot on the offense has been answered and solved, which is good. So that'll wrap up episode 4 this week. It was nice having the draft this past weekend to have something to look forward to and talk about for once. Next week we'll go in a little bit more discussion about what college football might look like this coming year. Maybe talk some baseball. A lot of discussion about the baseball season possibly getting underway in June as we head into the month of May and the final week of the semester at Mount Union. I know, Billy, you're ready to get done, and I know, Will, you and I are on the same boat, just ready to get out of classes at home.
Yeah, I gotta really get my MLB The Show franchise in full throttle here.
Yeah, I hope everybody's staying safe, stay inside, same thing. Just other countries are done with this because they all bought in. I don't think America's completely done that yet, so.
No, Ohio just said that we're almost done with this thing.
God, I think we're rushing into it. I'm just glad they're not opening restaurants. When I saw that press conference and they said restaurants will remain closed, I know a lot of people at B-Dubs were disappointed that we couldn't open up, but in my head I was like, I'm very relieved that we're not letting people in the building quite yet. So.
Well, yeah, we're definitely ready to get back to normal soon, and hopefully you get football season on track in the fall. But that'll wrap up episode 4 of Full Timeout with COVID-19, brought to you by Raider Student Media. As always, check out the Dynamo for latest quarantine articles from our RSM staff. Always listen to 91.1 WRMU every single day, and check out our YouTube page, Studio M. So from Billy Beebe, Will Brienza, I'm Brendan Devini saying stay safe, wash your hands, and go Raiders.